tuning in. If you haven't done so, please like and subscribe to Shaniece Be on YouTube. You can also follow me on Instagram at Shaniece Be. So this video is going to discuss a heavy topic. I encourage you to step away if you know that this is going to be just a little too much for you right now. The video is going to discuss police brutality. This video is going to discuss just things that we need to do better as a society, as a state, as a country to create the change we need. However, I can't sleep. I don't know how anyone else is sleeping. And I know just on Wednesday I say, you know, as a full-time working mother, it's important that you get rest when you can. However, it's also important that you don't force yourself to go to sleep when you do have a lot of stuff in your mind. Maybe you should journal. Maybe you should cry a little bit. Maybe you should do some self-care, take a bath, read, educate yourself, do your research, because we try to hold these things in and we just bottle it up until it explodes. So tonight I'm not asleep. Tonight I'm up. Tonight I'm researching. Tonight I'm studying. Tonight I'm journaling and just letting myself feel what I need to feel, because too often, and I'm not really shocked about the events that are taking place, because I know that if we want to see that real change, we have to get more attorneys that are willing to try to enact and amend these laws, and also more therapists. We're going to need a lot more therapists and attorneys to really heal some of the trauma due to these systems and just generations of oppression. Now, this has everyone's attention who at least wants to pay attention to some extent. And I feel like we have a lot of work to do with regards to amending and creating new laws. So I feel like if we want to see the change, I feel like the real change is going to come from changing laws, because if you want to hold these law enforcement officers accountable, you can't do so if they're protected by the law. I know the goal was for some people to get more people of color, more Black people, more Latinx people, more Asians, more people into the police department. Or some people's like, even let's get the police into the community. However, there are laws that need to be amended and changed, right? And we need people who are able to understand the law, understand the policy, and be able to serve the community when they need someone to talk to, because this is a lot and it's exhausting. And I'm not out there on the ground doing the groundwork. There are some people out there, I don't know how they do it, because I'm tired right now, but my mind is just going. But for those who are actually out there doing the groundwork, I hope they're able to rest. I hope that there's more people willing to show up so they can maybe have a break. And so in order to create this real change, we need people who are willing to function in this system just a little bit, whether it be that you're becoming a therapist, a social worker, you're becoming an attorney who can really change some of these policies, change some of the laws.
How do you begin to repair relations between communities and their police force when there is clearly so much anger and so much distrust?
Well, you have to first be honest, and I haven't heard any of that. Even with this $12 million settlement in the case of Breonna Taylor, you know, there are all these faux reforms, things that were only promises, not anything that really they have to do. The city council must approve much of this. And then let's not forget that there's no admission of wrongdoing. And so listen,
on everything, I've also come across some beautiful souls, and I appreciate the work that they do and their ability to speak up and just share their experience, because you don't get this often. So throughout this video you're watching, I am going to share other videos that I found on YouTube. I do not want to take credit for the work that they are doing. I'm going to list their links down below so you can access that information as well. Also, I would encourage you to do your own research and to look into the facts of the case as well, because you weren't there, I weren't there, but all we're going off of right now is just the media and what's being said. There's some people we haven't heard from that's directly involved in the case.
The grand jury voted to return an indictment against Detective Hankinson for 3 counts of wanton endangerment for wantonly placing the 3 individuals in apartment 3 in danger of serious physical injury or death. The charge of wanton endangerment in the first degree is a Class D felony, and if found guilty, the accused can serve up to 5 years for each count. Kentucky law states that a person is guilty of wanton endangerment in the first degree when, under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life, he wantonly engages in conduct which creates a substantial danger of death or serious physical injury to another person. My office is prepared to prove these charges at trial. However, it's important to note that he is presumed innocent until proven guilty.
So, like Tamika said, there are some people who were directly involved with the selling of Black and brown bodies into slavery for the sake of trafficking. And also, we are going to need a lot more lawyers, okay? People being knowledgeable about the law and how the law works, okay?
I know I'm a realist, and so I deciphered all of his doublespeak and code talk, and we know that this is really a non-indictment. It has nothing to do with Breonna Taylor. This was about Officer Brett Hankinson firing rounds into the next-door neighbor's apartment. It had nothing to do with the murder of Breonna Taylor. Those officers, according to the Attorney General, were justified in that use of force. Now, I don't know how 16 shots fired by one is justified use of force when officers are taught to fire 2 shots in rapid succession and then reassess the threat. But nonetheless, that was his story and he's sticking to it. And I found it offensive that he would call out celebrities and alleged influencers because he too says he's a Black man and somehow celebrities can't speak for Kentuckians, but as a Black man, he can speak for us. And so I understand he's skin folk, not kinfolk. He doesn't speak for me.
Because people get so confused about what that really is and how, like for instance, with the Breonna's law that is banning the no-knock warrant and stating that officers should have their body cameras on, that's just for their jurisdiction. That's not for the whole state of Kentucky. That's not for the whole United States. It's just what their city council was able to do with their policy and their ordinances in their community. So with the ordinance in their community, they're able to request that. That's not the case for each state. Each jurisdiction, each city, county, they all have different councils that really facilitate and make sure a lot of the day ins and outs take place, right? So we need people that are willing to show up in those positions, but not in those positions just to fill those positions while it's convenient and popular and trending, but really because it's something they're genuine about. I think people were really hopeful that something different would happen to the officers, right? And I just wanted to share this clip pertaining to a retired LAPD officer. I saw this on YouTube. I'm going to drop the links down below. However, I appreciate her perspective because she's the first officer who publicly announces these things. There's a lot of officers that I've come in contact with who are passionate and they believe that what they're doing within the system, even if that system was not built for them, within the system that they're trying to function in, they're doing what they can to really do the right thing, protect the children, stop domestic violence, stop sexual violence. So I appreciate them too. However, she is the first, and I feel like we're at a point where you kind of have to publicly discuss these things. You can't just say it, when it's convenient or when it's just one person. Like, it needs to be said.
Just what Corey talked about, shouldn't the outrage be on the reason that these 3 were there, the search warrants, and the lack of accountability there? These 3, the facts of the case, if indeed they did identify, they did break the door down, but then they saw this individual and he shoots a police officer in the leg, returning that fire with lethal force, isn't that absolutely within their right in that situation?
Well, if you buy into that version and I don't, then certainly officers get to return fire if they're fired upon. But there's also
do you not buy into the fact that that Kenneth Walker fired the first shot?
I don't know if he fired the first
He
shot.
admits he
That's
did.
what they're, well, that's what they say he admits. And so I haven't heard him in a courtroom say that he fired the first shot. That's what they say. And so listen, I'm not just taking wholesale what they say, because what they also said is that there was no one injured. What they also said is that there was no cameras on the officers, and we've seen a still photo of one officer wearing a camera. So listen, there's plenty for me to be bothered by. This Detective Hankerson came from Lexington Police Department before he was hired by Louisville, and he was problematic over there. One of his supervisors said they wouldn't even recommend him to be hired by another department, yet he was. We know that he has a disciplinary history. We know that he was facing several sexual assault charges on the Louisville Police Department. And so listen, let's not pretend that somehow these guys are choir boys and they were just, happened upon a house and they were just fired upon for no reason. They judge shopped to get that no-knock warrant. And I'm going to tell you what I know as a 20-year veteran patrol officer who's involved in search warrants. If you have a no-knock warrant, you don't announce because you don't have to. And so again, because they say they did and they found one witness versus several who said they didn't, that's what the story is and that's what we should go with. I'm not buying it.
Now, you're saying that the whole, basically what you're laying out is a total, everything's corrupt, everybody's in on it, AG all the way down. Is that your experience when you were with the LAPD? Did you do this, or did this happen all the time? And how flagrant is this?
Well, we know that officers lie. So we know that officers lie. Now, did I lie when I was a police officer? No, I didn't. But do officers lie? Yes, they do. We see it not only recently in this case, but we've seen officers lie about reasons to justify deadly use of force. And listen, once they kill you, then there's only one version to tell. And because officers are given great deference, much like an attorney general, their version is usually taken whole cloth. And so please don't pretend that officers don't misrepresent the truth. And so we'll have to wait and see if they go to court, raise their hand, and testify under oath to the things that they're purporting to be facts today.
Fair enough.
I don't know if you all recall, but in my last video, when I was doing the review of WAP and Meg Thee Stallion's domestic violence incident, I was saying how if we really want to create the change, it's not as simple as charging the officers who killed her, but making sure that the laws will allow you to charge someone, an officer, when there is a wrongdoing that takes place. Because with the way the law is set up right now, while an officer's active and they're facilitating something for the state and they're acting out whatever they need to act out, or they're enforcing whatever law they need to enforce, by law they can legally get away with it, okay? So I really think that we're going to have to do a lot more work. We're going to need more attorneys. We're going to need more therapists and social workers to really understand the policies and the laws and how that may impact people, and how we can use this to amend current laws or just start over.
So hopefully all those people marching in the streets for Breonna will make sure they go to the polls and vote. And when you think about him praising Kentucky General Daniel Cameron, you have to say, well, did Daniel Cameron do everything possible to ensure that justice was done completely, justice for Breonna as well? Remember, this whole probable cause affidavit, Joy, was based on a lie. They claimed that the United States Postal Inspector said Breonna was having packages delivered to her home, but the United States Postal Inspector said he did not make that statement. So did Daniel Cameron present that to the grand jury? Did Daniel Cameron present that the one witness that he keeps parading said that the police knocked and announced, but there was 12 witnesses that our legal team, 12 neighbors that said they did not hear the police knock and announce. And in fact, that particular neighbor who they keep parading to try to justify the unjustifiable killing of Breonna, on two previous statements, he said they did not hear the police knock and announce. But it was now this third time they said that. And if Daniel Cameron presented that to the grand jury and didn't present the other 12 neighbors, how is that fair to Breonna?
Let me ask you this, Ben, because the FBI says that they are also investigating this case to see if Breonna's civil rights were violated. What can you tell us about this, and could charges still be filed?
Yes, they can, Whoopi. I know Attorney Baker, my co-counsel, she has been keeping very much detailed accounts of what the FBI has been doing, and we know they're looking into how this no not warrant was executed and all the policies and procedures that were violated, like sending the ambulance away when they execute this warrant, which is a violation of the policies and procedure. And after Breonna was shot, she was laying without any medical attention for at least 20 minutes, if not more. So they're looking into that.
Value of human life. And who is he to determine the value of someone's life? Aren't we all allowed due process? Aren't we all supposed to have our day in court and share our side of things? Not everybody's able to do that. Breonna will not be able to do that. So I think this is something I'm always going on a rant about, because not everyone gets their day in court. And this is what I am talking about. This right here is what I'm talking about. Okay, if you had a warrant for her, so you claim, and some of this is just, it's mind-blowing, honestly. It is. And it's sickening.
Officer Brett Hankinson firing rounds into the next-door neighbor's apartment had nothing to do with the murder of Breonna Taylor. Those officers, according to the Attorney General, were justified in that use of force. Now, I don't know how 16 shots fired by one is justified use of force when officers are taught to fire 2 shots in rapid succession and then reassess the threat. But nonetheless, that was his story, and he's sticking to it.
So I believe it was 6 officers who responded that night, but only one of the officers were charged with 3 counts of wanton, and that to me is kind of mind-blowing. However, like I said, the law is not set up in a way that's going to punish or hold officers accountable when they are committing illegal acts and they're actively enforcing the law. So I think there does need to be some amendment to current laws, and just, you know, it's complicated. And then people, you know, just because the Attorney General handling the case is Black, someone, like they said, not all skin folk are kinfolk, and that's period. And for anyone wondering, like, how can you sit here and have this conversation with us, but you're dating someone white? I know my history. I know where I come from. And don't get me wrong, I'm not having to, there are people in these relationships, because it's like a fetish now, or a trending thing, or not now, but it's been a thing, but they think that's their escape, or they think that, you know, I don't know what they think, honestly, but they think that this is okay, or I can just, you know, educate him on this. It's not my job to educate you. I would not be with him if he didn't understand. There's been times where he's peeped out things before I even caught it. And if you're not doing that with me, I don't want any part of it. So if you are in these interracial relationships and you don't understand how certain levels of oppression play out daily, or how racism really shows up on a day-to-day basis, you might want to reconsider your relationship, because it's just going to cause more issues.
And I found it offensive that he would call out celebrities and alleged influencers, because he too says he's a Black man, and somehow celebrities can't speak for Kentuckians, but as a Black man, he can speak for us. And so I understand he's skin folk, not kinfolk. He doesn't speak for me.
How do you begin to repair relations between communities and their police force when there is clearly so much anger and so much distrust?
Well, you have to first be honest, and I haven't heard any of that. Even with this $12 million settlement in the case of Breonna Taylor, you know, there are all these faux reforms, things that were only promises, not anything that really they have to do. The city council must approve much of this. And then let's not forget that there's no admission of wrongdoing. And so listen,
So we know that Breonna Taylor was shot in her home, and I think they said it was justified because the boyfriend shot first. However, there's been cases where there was no weapon involved, there were no shots fired at the officers, and someone's life was taken. George Floyd was a more recent case. However, this has been going on for centuries, for decades. These issues are not new. They're new because some people all of a sudden want to pay attention. Now that it's convenient, now that it's trending. This goes back to what I was saying before. We really have to educate ourselves. You have to get out there and vote. You have to do your research. And don't be so caught up in the Democratic and Republican thing. Like, do your research. Do your research. You have to be more educated about the choices you make. And you have to understand the law. We don't really understand the law, and that's the problem. And I say we because there's a large majority of us who really don't understand the law. And when we let our emotions and everything else get in the way, we kind of get stuck in that rage. And that's what some want a full-out war. However, to create the real change, we have to create different laws. We have to amend the laws, we have to create new laws. But if you want to see the change for those who are enforcing the law, you have to change the laws that they function under. You have to change the laws that they are enforcing. If not, they're going to continue to enforce the laws. They're going to continue to do what they need to do if they find themselves in a situation, or if things are just, they're going to do what they need to do. So maybe go to law school, educate yourself, something, because we need to change a lot, okay? And it's exhausting. And then I wonder, why are we trying to continue to keep changing these laws?
Retired Los Angeles Police Department Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Sergeant Dorsey, thanks for joining us. When you look at the clashes that we've seen between police and protesters, is there a way for police to handle what seemed, or at least Shimon is describing, a almost entirely peaceful protest until the police came in and blocked it, without making it even more tense? In other words, is it normal just to stop protesters from walking, or not?
Well, listen, certainly there's a way for officers to handle protesters without being confrontational. Police officers are taught to use only that force necessary to overcome resistance and or gain compliance. And so understand that there's a segment of police officers out there who live for protests. They want to engage. They want to get involved in what, I've heard referred to on LAPD as stick time, because there's no use of force report that you have to create once you engage a protester in that way. And so there are those who live for that on both sides, right?
What we're doing now is just not enough. And I think things are only going to get worse if we do not fix the issue. People keep talking about peaceful. Let's be peaceful. And that would be great. But let's solve the problem so we do not have to keep being peaceful.
Bogus intel, and they came in guns blazing, even though they knew she wasn't a threat. Every step of the way this investigation ran, the police screwed up. They made 1 million mistakes, which is 1 million more than any black person is ever allowed to make. And honestly, with the amount of mistakes that the police made throughout the entire process, I don't even know if it's fair to call them mistakes at this point. Because a mistake is something you do by accident. But these cops blatantly ignored so many protocols and so much information. At some point, it moves from a mistake to just actively not giving a fuck. And it's bad enough when you learn what these people did in the heat of the moment. But in a way, what's even worse is what they did when they had the time to think.
Breonna Taylor was alive for several minutes after police shot her 5 times, and for more than 20 minutes after Taylor was fatally shot. Taylor, 26, lay where she fell in her hallway, receiving no medical attention, according to dispatch logs.
You see her boyfriend after the shooting being arrested here in the parking lot. Police tried to charge him with attempting to kill police officers, but those charges were later dropped.
A recently released police incident report from that night is mostly blank. It claims there was no forced entry. It does list Taylor as a victim of a crime.
And under injuries, it says none, even though Taylor was shot 8 times.
You see, it's one thing to quote unquote shoot someone accidentally 8 times, but leaving her on the floor without any medical attention, that isn't an accident. That's just a blatant disregard for black life.
Allergies, excuse me. So yes, Breonna Taylor, when I think of Breonna Taylor, I think of someone who's basically my age. I'm 27, she was 26. She was an EMT worker. These are the things that cross my mind as I think about who Breonna Taylor was, and that could have been me. 26 years old. And this is why I'm always saying that, yes, I may be considered younger, but you never know when your time is coming. You do not know what's going to happen. So if you have a dream or a desire of your heart, I say go for it, okay? Because we really don't know. If we solve the problem, there will be peace. So may Breonna Taylor rest in peace, and a lot more others who have lost their life.